Alright, Dankey Kang gang, I got a response on my video about why I don't like anarchism. First of all, let me say thank you for the response. It's a very long, well written one, and I'll break it down paragraph by paragraph. So, he said, consider not ranting at all and learning literally anything substantial about anarchism first, watching the video and typing as I go. Alright, so he said, a state in the anarchist conception is, roughly speaking, a relative to the electorate small body of professional decision makers, meaning for it to be a state, they have to have political autonomy with the monopoly on the legitimized use of violence or the issuance of orders conducive to such violence over a given territory that their decisions govern. It's nonsense to suggest you need this to create a military or a border. All anarchist societies had borders against reactionary forces. The Zapatistas don't, and they're doing fine. Alright. So, I mean, do I think you need a state apparatus to have a military or to enforce a border? No, I don't. My argument was that the military and border security of the CNTFA was poor, was lacking, because they lacked the centralized state apparatus that would give them a sort of constant supply of military armaments or machines, coordinated economic plans that were done by state planning. I think such a thing could be accomplished. And this doesn't mean you need to create this sort of separate hierarchy that's above everybody else. The people who are the decision makers, the small body of professional decision makers, could be elected from the proletariat. There's no rule in Marxist-Leninism that says that these small body of professional decision makers have to just be these shitbag authoritarian chuds. They can be of the very same proletariat that establishes these communes, that establishes these trade unions. In fact, trade unionists can make very good leaders in these kinds of situations. So, you say the YPG and EZLN are good models for a less hierarchical military force in many respects, while the idea that the CNT were sending civilians to fight throughout the war is ridiculous. Both the Russian Revolution and the Spanish Revolution both started with a mix of defected soldiers and armed civilians, and then progressed to do military training for new recruits as best they could with the resources they had, organized mainly either by Republican government or CNT soldiers in the case of Spain, or mostly Bolsheviks in Russia, one of the main differences being that the CNT never did conscription and the Bolsheviks did, though that didn't affect the effort much because a soldier shortage wasn't a concern. Okay. So that could have something to do with the relative population density, per area of Spain versus the whole width of the USSR. I'm sure that, when the Bolsheviks did conscription, I'm not sure which war he's referring to, perhaps the Civil War or perhaps even World War II, but regardless, I'm sure if the CNT were pushed to a point of such desperation, if they had the if they had the political capability to call for a conscription, they would have done so, rather than let Spain fall to the nationalists. So, and I agree, you don't have to wait to have some kind of professional, Halo Master Chief guy from Halo as your army, as the basic soldier in your army before you launch your socialist revolution. You have to work with what you have, but that doesn't mean that you can't organize what you have better, and you can't I don't know, how do I say this? With a centralized state apparatus, the CNT could have coordinated their economic production to outproduce that of the nationalists They could have better armed and better equipped their soldiers. They could have coordinated with the Republicans to really ensure that Spain doesn't fall to the nationalists. Instead, they were too divided. They were too uncoordinated, and this lack of coordination is really what helped Spain fall. So, do I think conscription is a good thing? No. But do I think the CNT would have been above using conscription if they had the capacity to do so? No, I don't think so. I think the CNT would have resorted to conscription, just as the Bolsheviks did. It says, your concern about a lack of cooperation between communes shows, 1, you need to read about how it actually worked in Spain, and 2, you need to read Mutual Aid, a Factor in Evolution, to understand that there's an evolutionary basis for such cooperation. Alright, here's what I understand. I understand all of this. That mutual aid and everyone working to their own benefit is something that would naturally come about in peacetime. But in wartime, under the conditions of imperialism, you might have capitalist sectors plotting one commune against the other, one trade union against the other, in order to carve up and pit the society against each other. For example, they may back an oil union while throwing the I don't know, like the water power and the dam workers union under the bus, something to that effect. So that is why I think syndicalism is prone to be weak to imperialism, just because they don't have that sort of central coordinated response to imperialism. There is always a chance that when capitalism starts invading, they might say, well, we have our cozy little commune over here, and it's tough shit that what you guys are dealing with, but that's not our problem, buddy. And so, unfortunately, I'm not as optimistic about cooperation between the communes. I'm not as optimistic about, let's all rally to each other's side and come to our aid now that we've finally overthrown capitalism and our people are exhausted and we're probably trying to construct this bold new society. But, in the meantime, let's start a whole other war. That is why I don't see that sort of, anarchist confederacy or whatever you want to call it come into fruition. And as for how it actually worked in Spain, there are economists and other people, Republicans, mind you, but they said that the communes would often withhold resources if it didn't benefit them enough. There was a lot of bickering back and forth between the communes, and such bickering could be avoided through centralized state planning. But once again, you guys are not for that. So you say, you need a vanguard party to avoid reaction, but that can be prevented with mass education, which is done by the unions which perform. I'm not going to sing the whole thing. The same ideological function without seizing state power, and without becoming a figure that you can't remove, and with rehabilitation and education programs for right-wingers, capitalists, and fascists. This should ideally be perfected prior to armed struggle through the process of creating a critical mass of education unionists and militants to do an anarchist syndicalist revolution in the first place. Moreover, it is from within that the very same shitty vanguard that the counter-revolution of the USSR turned back to capitalism, because you centralize way too much power and you trust there's not going to be an ass clown at the top, as did China, as did Vietnam, and slowly Cuba is too. Alright. So there's a lot to unpack with this one. This paragraph in particular, um, the need for a vanguard party. Let's say that we had a what do you call it? A union whose sole devotion was to education and rehabilitation of right-wingers, capitalists, and fascists. That is all well and good. I think that's actually a good idea. For something to be in a post-revolutionary society, but to try to rely on that to combat those things, to try to rely on education and rehabilitation to combat right-wingers, capitalists, and fascists is a laughable notion, because right at some point, on some level, the capitalists know that they're scumbags. They know that they're getting away with literal murder, and there is a certain point where you cannot save some people. They have done too much. They have oppressed too many people. They have exploited too many people. All right, and they deserve to be held to account to that. Now, am I saying let's roll out the guillotines and do a reign of terror? No, but I am saying they should be put on trial. And I don't know if you consider a trial and a lengthy prison sentence as part of this rehabilitation, but I think it wouldn't be much rehabilitation without that. And if that is the case, then wouldn't you be just as guilty of creating gulags as somebody that you accuse like Stalin of being? Your little rehabilitation centers in your anarchist commune might as well be called gulags, because they're gulags by any other name, my friend. So, in terms of seizing state power and becoming a figurehead that we can't remove, well, if it's a figurehead we can't remove, then why did the Soviet Union dissolve away? Seems like it's pretty removable to me, my friend. If they vote to dissolve the Soviet Union, then it seems to me like the figureheads can be removed. And this should be perfected. The education rehabilitation process should be perfected prior to armed struggle. But this is what I'm trying to say, dude, is that you're not going to be able to educate or rehabilitate fascists. They're too fucking reactionary. They don't give a shit about being educated. And to them, when they hear rehabilitation, they think you're going to put them in the gulag. So they're willing to burn the whole thing down and go down with the ship. They're gonna go down fighting. That's because they're fascist scum. And it's a shame that they're not educated. It's a shame that they're fucking idiots, but that's not really our problem, nor is it our responsibility. I forgot who I said this to, but we shouldn't be trying to cater to reactionaries. We should be trying to cater to people who are already sympathetic to our cause. I mean, call me crazy. I just don't see the appeal of appealing to right-wingers, capitalists, and fascists. That to me just seems like a wasted endeavor. So this guy seems to think that you can have a socialist revolution through education and rehabilitation. I'm not really sure if this guy knows how revolutions work, but usually capitalists aren't all that willing to capitulate to just handing the means of production over. And they have these things called cops and soldiers, and they're willing to fight on the capitalist behalf. So it's not the burden of violence, once again, doesn't fall on the socialists. It falls on the capitalists, who they are the ones who escalate it to a point of violence, not us. But to not have an armed wing of the proletarian revolution is absolutely foolish. I mean, do you want to get just rolled over? How do you expect to consolidate anything? Just relying on education. Education's a big part of it, yes, but geez Louise, my friend. You can say the same shitty vanguard counter-revolution of the USSR turned back to capitalism. So, I mean, do you think that the USSR was undergoing a socialist revolution, since you're saying that it was counter-revolutionary for them to dissolve? I'm not sure if this guy... Dude, I hope you're not trolling me. I'm really trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here and assume that you're not trolling me here, but this seems like a troll kind of comment. Dude, alright. It says, because you centralize way too much power and just trust there's not going to be an ass clown at the top, as did China, as did Vietnam, and slowly Cuba is now too. Alright, I don't know very much about the politics of China, Vietnam, or even Cuba for that matter. I'm still learning about Cuba, but it's one country I'm studying. But as far as there being like a dictatorship in any of these countries, I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it. So he says, the fuck is this toilet paper shit? Aw, come on, dude. Says nobody votes on which fucking toilet paper to use. You just use whatever toilet paper is available at the time. And the factor is, what does that mean? That makes, it would probably prioritize doing it whatever way is most useful for the time by people accounting for allergies. Alright, guy. I'm sorry that you took the time to type that sentence out, because the toilet paper thing was just meant to be sort of an analogous joke. Alright, I said in a direct democracy, people are going to be hit with all kinds of day-to-day issues, matters of state, which would be thrust upon the mass populace and would be reliant on their vote, their consensus, and such things wouldn't be conducive to building a proletariat revolution, at least within that century. If you wanted to do that, you have to have a delegation of some kind of authority to somebody. And that's not to say we should have this isolated group of weird elite goobers at the top that control everything. I'm not saying that. Nobody's saying that. What we want is a vanguard party that's educated, and rehabilitated, like you say. One that is ideologically pure and devoted to the revolution, so one that isn't counter-revolutionary. And one that is, most importantly of all, constituted entirely of the proletariat. The vanguard party is supposed to be the most class-conscious sector of the proletariat class. So why wouldn't you want those guys in charge? Why would you want to leave it up to chance that reactionaries and capitalist and imperialist scum would infiltrate into your system? Give me 2 seconds, I have to let my dog in. Interrupting my video. Says, I don't know how you even had that idea and thought it was worth putting in a video. Also, in practical circumstances, most people don't go to every meeting because yes, they have other things to do, but they're still made aware of what's being voted on, and meeting transcripts can be shared about, and folks have always had the ability to show up later on and argue about it and call a vote if it's something they strongly care about. Alright, once again, like, where in a Marxist-Leninist approach is that not allowed? You're not allowed to voice an opinion? I'm sorry, the whole principle of democratic centralism is diversity in thought, unity in action. No, keywords being diversity in thought, dude. It's not like they, the second you disagreed with the party, the second you deviated from the party's will by 0.01%, you were taken out to the back and killed. That's just, you know. But, you know, as for the toilet paper thing, I just meant that people may sometimes be burdened with decisions that don't affect them or that they may find menial. And the sorts of decisions like that may be better off left to like the Minister of Sanitation, who was elected by the proletariat and is a proletariat himself. He says the notion that hierarchical ownership of the means of production is necessary so productive or could produce significant advancements in production is nonsense. There have been numerous studies that have found that direct worker ownership is much more productive than taking orders from a boss, even if that boss flies a red flag. TLDR, stop making shit uninformed videos and read a damn book, preferably all of these. And so he sends me Rudolf Rocker, Anarcho-Syndicalism, Augustin Soci with the Peasants of Aragon, Umberto Marzocchi, remembering Spanish-Italian anarchist volunteers in the Spanish Civil War, Tragic Week, Many Days, Barcelona, 1937, Manolo Gonzalez, Life in Revolutionary Barcelona, Rudolf Rocker, The Tragedy of Spain, George Orwell, Homage to Catalonia. Alright, that's a lot of books, dude. I have heard of Homage to Catalonia, and, you know, I'm still learning about the Spanish Civil War, so don't fault me if I slip up. But all that said, I'm pretty confident in my assessment of the CNT Fae, from what I've read about the CNT Fae, so, I mean, you know. When you say the hierarchical ownership of the means of production, that's not what Marxist-Leninists are arguing for. We want collective ownership of the means of production, dude. Like, once again, like, I think you've constructed this false premise of Marxist-Leninism. Perhaps you have a false perception of Marxist-Leninism, because this isn't at all what Marxist-Leninism calls for. Collective ownership of the means of production is there. In terms of having management, I hope you're not arguing against having a sort of management. After all, there are many different fields where you need someone at the helm. This doesn't mean that there has to be a sort of power dynamic between them. They can be the management can be constituents of the proletarian class. For more information on that, look up into Lenin's new economic principle or new economic policy. But in terms of my videos being shit and uninformed, you know, I disagree, friend. I respectfully disagree. I think my videos are fairly well informed. I don't know everything, but I'm still learning, and I'll admit that I'm still learning. But that said, I do read books, friend. I read lots of books. So to say, you know, I don't read books is kind of sad. But yeah, overall, thank you for the comment. I hope you see this response. You know, I appreciate it. I appreciate you sending me all these links. I'll try to check them out if I get when I get the time. Who am I kidding? I have all the time I need. I'll check them out. So, yeah, I kind of... Sorry, dude. I don't think you really changed my mind here with this, though. I don't think you really changed my mind. This is all stuff I was prepared to hear, and this is all stuff that I'm not surprised to hear. But yeah, I mean, I do appreciate this. So I mean, like I said, hit me up, respond, like, comment, all that stuff.